Those can go into wherever you wanna put them in your budget book. That's updated
Right.
information for
They
your,
don't go any special place.
Yeah.
they go whatever tab in the book they correspond to.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I took out the old one and put the new one in.
Yeah, however you wanna organize it, it's totally up to you.
I just threw the old one out.
I keep them so I can see what I've changed every time.
Yeah.
There we go.
Get separated and put it in the book. Yeah, so the look. I'm just getting in myself. That goes to the last page.
Hey, Eric.
Milani.
Yeah, I talked to her a couple days ago. Yeah. She said she was good. Yeah, I actually have some of those, I think they're 3 feet wide by 7 feet high panels that you can. I told her I could bring 2 of them down to the picture and they can hang stuff all over.
Well, it's gonna be a worry too.
Yeah, well, I told her I put them up for 2 weeks. So if she gets them to me by the first of the month, I'll have them up for 2 weeks until they you know.
Yeah.
I read it.
And then I know the last budget meeting, when I had to listen to it at home, all I could hear was, this is a lot louder than I.
And of course, I can hear you better than I can hear anybody else here. Because you were the loudest. Boom.
Which is good. But there's yeah, there's no way I'm gonna stand in that line and get back here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went home and ate ramen noodles.
You know, sometimes there's nothing better than some good alarm.
Yeah. Noodles, I love them.
That's good.
SRO because I just don't know. A good grasp on that. But we can be fired by law.
From DMP, and all that.
Well, that's my. It's the same. Well, it was, but what's in here is actually from last year. Because what's in here was from last year.
I know.
The amount is the same. The amount is the same. So I do have that.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. Okay.
Jane?
I haven't heard
Didn't
it.
you say something?
Oh,
Didn't you say?
no, he was on vacation, but I did think he told me that he had something going on.
I wanna say he mentioned at the end of last.
No, was it going to a wedding?
Last meeting.
Wasn't it a wedding?
No, that was the Florida trip, he already did that one.
Oh, okay.
He's not gonna be.
I don't think so. He said something over the last meeting.
Well, in the revenue, I think it's listed. What the other town faces.
Tom, do you know if your other members are coming?
Don is not coming, he just texted me about 15 minutes ago, so he's still not feeling well.
Okay. And James, I don't think he's gonna be here tonight if you wanna talk over, maybe.
Was it the big chair?
You can have a place, but you can't use the chair.
Assuming you have a comfortable chair, would be a short meeting. Yeah, so I think we're good to go.
So I'll call the meeting to order at 6:01. As a reminder, we have, fire department to do tonight, as well as capital, as well as community organizations. We're not gonna do police and SRO yet. And then Dennis is asked to give an update on the legislation for Maine Yankee, so.
And, revenue as well.
Can we just level set briefly on what the rest of the schedule might look like over the next week?
We'll discuss that tonight so that we'll all know,
Okay.
because I don't know either. We did them like,
Oh, we didn't the last time. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'd like to start out tonight, and just kind of update everybody on where we stand with the, thank you. Legislation on the Maine Yankee Air Pollution Control Facility, issue that we have going on. If anybody doesn't know, Maine Yankee, has gotten the State Board of Environmental Protection to classify most all of their equipment and land up there as qualified air pollution control facility equipment, which exempts currently $93 million worth of their property from property tax. We filed an appeal with the DEP. We filed an appeal with the commissioner who made the initial ruling. And she upheld her ruling. We appealed that to the Board of Environmental Protection. They upheld her ruling. So in response to that, we filed legislation asking the legislature to clarify what we think is an error in the law. So the law was written in 1971 for air pollution control facilities. Maine Yankee didn't go online until 1972. The DEP has taken the 1971 law, which doesn't mention anything about nuclear facilities, and applied it to Maine Yankee and said, because those canisters are containing the fuel rods, are containing radiation and those radionuclides, they classify as air pollution control equipment. if you read the original 71 statute, it really kind of plays out to paper companies and cement factories and think in the 70s about acid rain and all the pollution that was being spewed out of these things. It was an incentive for them to install air pollution control equipment to stop that. And we did not feel that Maine Yankee was part of that. So we introduced a bill in the legislature to clarify that spent nuclear fuel and higher than Class C nuclear waste was not intended to be part of that law. It was accepted by the legislature. They've had their public hearing on it, for which thank you to everybody from the town of Wiscasset that either came and testified in person or sent in written testimony. There was a lot of testimony in favor of this bill. Maine Yankee is the only one that stood up and testified against this bill. Yesterday, they held a work session on whether to move the bill out of committee and into the full legislature. For 2 grueling hours, we sat there and listened to a whole lot of objections, a whole lot of questions, a whole lot of discussion, which is great. That's part of our process. This is how this works. And I won't, we got a lot we want to move on, so I'll kind of shorten this up a little bit. In the end, there were 9 members of the committee of 13 still present. We had to make a few amendments to this to satisfy some of the objections that people had, but in the end, the vote was 8-1 ought to pass, which now moves it to the full legislature to debate on the floor, which we feel reasonably comfortable in that I think we can pull this off. So that would put $93 million worth of their property back on our tax rolls, should this pass. Still some hurdles to get by with it yet, but yesterday was a good day. Having it come out of committee 8-1 ought to pass is a very good committee report and will help us on any floor fight. We've been working this really hard for the last 2 weeks. Peter Murray, Sarah McDaniel, and myself, and we actually hired a professional lobbyist to help work on our behalf up there, and we knocked on doors and emails and phone calls, and we worked hard on this. And as I said in my email to the selectmen last night, I said, we won the battle, but we're still fighting the war. And I'm telling you this because this is a very important backdrop to everything that we do with this budget going forward. Because if we don't get the money that Maine Yankee is currently assessed at, we're going to have a revenue shortfall that's going to end up being made up this year out of our fund balance and possibly next year out of taxation. So there's some unknowns here that we just don't know. We will end up with a tax settlement with Maine Yankee one way or another. They are going to fight us on their current assessed value. They've already told us that right up front, which will likely wind us in front of the Assessment Review Board with the state of Maine, and it's likely they will force us into mediation. So I think we'll end up with something for negotiated settlement, but that looks like I have no idea. So just when you're doing your deliberations on this budget and your recommendations and what you're going to do, just bear that in mind. This year, we're faced with about a $900,000 shortfall in their revenue because of they only paid what they paid last year in order to reserve their right to file for an abatement. We've covered $500,000 of that in this year's tax bill by raising our overlay to the maximum amount. So if worst case scenario this year, if they paid not a dime more than they paid last year, we'll get hit with a $400,000 hit to our fund balance. So I just put that out there for everybody to keep in the back of their mind as we keep moving forward with this. When this is going to be scheduled for a vote for the full legislature, I don't know yet. The committee members that weren't present yesterday had 48 hours to record their vote, so we won't know for sure what the final tally of that is until sometime. probably on Friday. But it was a good day for us yesterday.
Thank you. All right, let's go to fire department then. Rob, do you wanna come on up in the hot seat?
Sure. Which one is the most
This one.
phone? That here's.
Because if you sit there and talk, stop, sit here, I want to be one.
She's gonna gamble though.
I do.
Things to throw.
If you're a fireman, you should know where the hot seat is.
Right.
So the fire department budget, as I have presented to you, hasn't changed a great deal. Compensation for the firemen, the part-time firemen have gone up by $1 an hour. We try to pay them the same amount that we pay our basic EMTs over at the EMS, so that's why you're seeing an increase in their compensation. But most everything else is either the same or dropped just a little bit. The one thing that I did mention to you the last time we met was that, and Rob and I have talked about this for a couple of years, is making the fire chief's position, I'll say fire chief's position, a full-time job, and using that position to assist the town in other ways. So I certainly don't think we have enough, Rob, you disagree with me. I don't think we have enough work for a full-time fire chief in and of itself. There's just not enough fire calls, there's not enough work to be done on that. A part-time fire chief and somebody who can be around during the day to assist with EMS calls, somebody that might be able to do the maintenance to this building instead of hiring a part-time maintenance person, turn that responsibility over to this position, and I point to Rob because it may be him, it may be somebody else. With the backdrop of what I just said to you guys, I'm not comfortable with putting on any more full-time positions this year. Just the cost of the benefits alone will run roughly $50,000, $40,000 a year on top of the increased salary that goes along with that.
And I wouldn't save any money with taking up the position.
We would save some money, but you could take whatever we had for part-time out of the municipal buildings fund and apply that towards it, because that's almost $18,000, I think, without looking for sure. So that would knock some of that down. But you know, we're creating a long-term thing. We're not doing this for 1 year. You put on a full-time employee, it's generally for a long time commitment. And I feel like it's irresponsible to do that in this year. But I'm gonna let Rob make his case, and you guys are, you know, you're the final judgment makers here on this.
I mean, I'm not gonna fight for or against it, it's, you know, ultimately you all's perspective and all of that, it would, with assisting and augmenting, EMS, it would increase the chances of getting more transfers, which if you pick up another paramedic level transfer, which pays around $1,000 before all your expenses, you know, if you pick up one more a week, there's another $52,000 a year. That position could help. You know, it's not, I agree with Dennis, there's not enough work for the fire chief to do that would make 40 hours a week. But if you did, you know, 25 hours a week as fire chief, you know, however, you know, 2 or 3 hours a day doing building maintenance or whatever, mowing, shoveling, 24-hour shift with EMS, or even just covering their second calls and transfers and things like that. I do agree that it would be a valuable position and would get more done at the fire station. But like Dennis said, maybe this year isn't the year to do it, but I just want to keep it on everybody's radar that it could be a very beneficial position, and it's kind of fluid and flexible, ultimately rest with you all.
Question?
Could you just kind of briefly describe, I don't have a sense of like what's going on, there's not enough fires. Like what have we seen over like a couple of year period, I mean, in terms of the activity level? And because I know you do, you roll.
Right, and it's
trees
really
come
not,
down
I
and a
mean,
lot of other stuff, the rest, what's the activity level?
our current call volume, because we only do fire, we assist EMS when they request us, but we usually only do fire, and our call volume right now is about 200 calls a year. That's not to say that position, the administrative side of it, keeping track of everybody's payroll and trainings and paperwork and you know, the administrative side of it. I mean, right now I spend 10 or 12 hours a week in the office, in addition to going to calls, and that keeps my head barely above water. There's things that go by the wayside on a busier week, you know, trying to get trucks to get maintained and, you know, just keeping up with truck checks and things like that, that ultimately, if I don't get them done, then it falls back to the members to do on their training night, which is Wednesday night. So when they're doing things that I could have done during that week or whatever, it falls back to them to take that up, and then they don't get the training that they deserve to have in that period on Wednesday evening.
So is it 200 over the last couple of years, is that a consistent?
It's fairly, yeah.
And how many people do we have?
Currently, we have 23 active fire members. We have 3 junior firefighters, and then we have 4 who are on what we call our lifetime members roster. They're older, more pretty much retired. They don't actively go in and fight fires. You know, they may come and assist on the scene, but for the most part, they're retired.
I mean, I think to Rob's point, there is some benefit to doing this. Can we pick up some additional EMS revenue? Possibly. But with EMS getting busier and busier with emergency calls, sending them on a transfer to Portland, to make $1,000, $1,200, and then, you know, take the expenses back out of that, and then have to pay CLC or somebody $800 to come cover mutual aid because we don't have a second crew in town, may diminish that somewhat. But the importance of having somebody around just to cover second emergency calls, which are increasing and are going to continue to increase. You know, we're the oldest county in the state. You know,
300 more residents.
we have a pretty high retired population here in town, that tends to utilize it more. And having that, even just having it around, even if it's just not an EMS person, certainly is a benefit. Right now, I jump in the truck and I go and help them out, but I'm not always available to do that. So, but again, my feeling is with the Maine Yankee thing, it might be just prudent to wait a year and see what happens, but I think that's a discussion that you guys need to have.
Did you have a question, Ken?
No, it was answered.
Rob, did you bring the printouts of the different budget with full-time in it?
I didn't.
Because I didn't put them in here. It was $80-some thousand more than. I think it pushed us over, I think it pushed us to like,
40% in.
yeah, it pushed us to like 256 on the fire department budget from where we were at. I can get it, I can get those out to you so you can take a look at them.
It was, excuse me, what did you say was the increase just by adding that position full-time?
Well, you're gonna add the increased salary, which puts the salary was alone was something that has to be discussed, and I've had a little bit of an issue with this because as a full-time EMS chief and a full-time police chief, I don't think a full-time fire chief that's only half doing fire chief work should be at the same pay rate.
Right.
I don't wanna pay $85,000 a year for fire chief to sweep floors.
Right.
So I think that would have to be looked at a little bit less. But just, assuming somebody, in worst case scenario, we do this as a part-time job, just the health insurance alone for somebody that, if Rob doesn't take it, somebody else does. They take a family health insurance plan, that's $31,000 a year. On top of the increased salary of, we'll say $60,000 a year. Plus social security increase, plus the 8.8% for retirement. You're adding another 100,000, top of my head, another $100,000, right there.
Anyone like to advocate for adding that in at the moment?
Not this time, but I sure will advocate for it next year, and we're gonna prevail on Maine Yankee, that's all there is to it.
Anything else you wanted to address in yours?
And Rob didn't have any capital requests this year. I think the $1.2 million we spent on fire apparatus in the last 2 years should keep them pretty happy for a little bit.
That's beautiful.
Yes, thank you. And the latest update is July of 25 for the new election. So another year.
Well, it's taken us, 18 months to get this, the new truck for the transfer station, which will be delivered on Friday. So,
It's your birthday and your Christmas.
Print a
Exactly.
picture. You're gonna print out a picture and put it on the wall.
Right. Countdown, start checking off. the days.
Exactly.
All right, so no more questions for Rob?
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you guys. Very much, thanks.
All right, so let's shift over to capital.
See, same show.
This is the same as what was in the- So is everybody get the updated, the capital stuff? If you didn't get the printed, I assume you emailed it to all of us.
I did, yes, I just.
There are printed versions on the table, it's the same thing that you got in your email.
I think I relooked it up.
A question for, could you explain, what the fund balance is?
Our undesignated fund balance is, basically your, savings account. It's money that we collected, we either underspent the budget or brought in more revenue at the end of the year than we budgeted for. And that money lapses into what we call the undesignated fund balance. It's money that we have that we haven't appropriated to spend in any way.
So what is the money that is appropriated and not spent? In other words, if we pass the warrant article, for example.
Right, so if our budget was combined $10 million this year, and we spent $900,000 of it, we had $100,000 that we collected in taxes for this budget. We didn't spend it, so it lapses into our fund balance, we call undesignated fund balance.
Okay,
The same on the revenue side, if we budgeted that we were gonna get $3 million in revenue, and we brought in $3.2 million in revenue, the $200,000 extra goes into the undesignated fund balance. So now we have $300,000 sitting here. It's recommended, and it's the town's policy, that the town have at least 2 months worth of its expenses sitting in its undesignated fund balance. So that way, if for some reason we have a bad year and we don't collect taxes like we should, or revenues start to not come in like they should, we still have cash on hand to keep paying our bills. We don't have to go out and borrow to pay the bills. So in, let's say 2017, well, I think the year I took over as town manager in 2020, we should have had somewhere around $2.5 million in our fund balance, and we had like 160,000, which is dangerously low, because previous boards kept tapping the fund balance to offset increases in taxes. I'm sorry, you can't take your savings and pay your bills. It's no different than being at home. You know, it just doesn't work that way. But in the last several years, between fiscal responsibility from our department heads, and more revenue than what we had anticipated, we built our fund balance up to last year, what did Fred tell you guys, 3.1 million. $3.1 million, which is getting back to where it really should be. We haven't gotten our fiscal year 23 audit yet, but I know we added more to it. So in my head, I'm thinking we have somewhere around $3.6 million sitting in there.
And the reason I ask is because, and I was wondering about, let's say, warrant articles that weren't spent, for example, the broadband, and we're not sure whether that's, you know, whether or not we're gonna have to be able to spend it this, you know, this fiscal year or next fiscal year, so do we need another warrant article? for
So
that?
that's different, because that comes out of our capital funds. So that's a whole different set pot of money. It didn't get spent this year, because you didn't get the grant. But it was, Evan has brought this up to me just a little bit, I haven't gotten all the details out yet. The money was appropriated as a match for state, federal, and private funds to move broadband ahead. It didn't specify what grant it was applied to, it was just grants, so it was kind of general. So my opinion is, if you have another grant that we're going to be able to get, that's very similar to what we appropriated this money for, you can still use it. And capital funds typically don't lapse each year, because capital projects generally just don't get done in the same year. You know, you're building a school for $10 million, you're not gonna get it done in 1 year. So that appropriation is good until whatever capital project you're working on is finished. So you wouldn't have to go back to ask for it again.
But it's still it hasn't been physically moved out of the.
No, it's still sitting in the capital fund account, earning us money.
And the 3.6, is that sitting in a bank?
Yes,
Yes, that's in a banking.
and that's earning us interest too. Somewhere in our revenues, you'll see that we've already well exceeded our revenue estimate on, because it's sitting in an interest-bearing checking account, which is paying us 5% right now.
Oh, and is the 86,000 in the department, is that the total we wanna take from the undesignated?
Yes,
This year?
that would be the total.
That's the total.
That's for the municipal side. Now, remember, we haven't seen the school budget yet.
I understand it, but that's a separate undesignated fund balance, isn't it?
From the capital,
Okay, yeah, I think this is one of the things, we all sat through the school budget meetings and we learned a lot, but some of it was confusing, and I think the part about where they were not totally clear in describing to us where their undesignated fund balance sits. I think they said they had like $1.2 million.
They have a separate one.
they have a separate.
Okay, so that
There's
is
a
a separate.
Yep.
Not-
Yep, their finances, other than what we send them every month, are totally separated, so their fund balance is their fund.
So whatever happens with the schools, they're not gonna hit this 3.6 anyway.
No, that's ours.
Got
It's gonna hit our checking account.
Yeah.
Because all of those funds are sitting in our checking
Checking
account.
place, but they're, from an accounting standpoint, they're separate funds.
Yes, yeah, totally.
So another example would be, let's say we designated the dump truck, but we haven't paid for it yet. So is that in the capital fund now?
Yes,
So the balance that you show in the capital fund now, is that what's in there now, or minus what is gonna be?
the balance that's there is what's in there now. But most everything that we did in capital last year, except for your 183,000, we've already spent. Because we paid for the fire truck right up front, because we got a pretty decent discount for doing that.
And the dump truck?
That's not coming out of capital. So any equipment that we buy for the transfer station, we do not take out of our capital fund. We borrow those funds and we put them in the budget, so that Alna and Westport Island pay a portion of that equipment. So that Wiscasset taxpayers aren't footing the bill for the entire purchase of the truck. They pay their share of that portion. Okay, so that one's not coming up. And that was what, 130,000?
Thank you.
Okay, so just like last year, I did the capital, if we start with not the spreadsheet, but with the explanations. There was an explanation for each capital request. And then I plugged them into the spreadsheet to show you where they would land. So some of this we've kind of already discussed. Aaron had discussed EMS.
The spreadsheet?
No,
No, I know that, I was just looking at the spreadsheet, tiny,
Yeah,
tiny, tiny,
you-
I
yeah,
need to
well-
magnify that.
mine's not tiny.
I said,
There's one.
that's okay. Yeah.
So
I'll get it
anyways.
after.
So, EMS, we kind of talked about this the other day, the fly car that we have tried as an experiment, which has proved to be a benefit. That car we have was a used cruiser that we brought from the county. It served its purpose, but it was used and it was used hard. And is starting to develop some mechanical issues. I know I had mice in my vehicle, which is, I think, gonna end up being totaled. And they've had some squirrels and mice in that vehicle as well, so. I believe the exhaust is getting ready to go, and the car's got 140,000 miles on it. So she is asking for another fly car, which I support. The one thing that I have suggested that we do differently this year is instead of taking some of these smaller vehicles out of the capital fund, is to lease them and take them out of the budget instead. And the current budgets reflect that. The lease payments are in the current budgets.
We haven't gotten to it, but police, we're looking at two cars there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is one of
We'll
them,
get to it.
is one of them good enough to become the car for this?
Except it puts us right back to where we are. You know, he's asked this year for 3 cruisers, and I knocked it down to 2. But we're gonna take another used beat up car to give to EMS. Now, I'm a little prejudiced against EMS because I've spent so long in it. But I don't think that every year EMS should get the hand-me-downs from somebody else. They work hard, they're saving lives. I want them to have a vehicle that I know is gonna get from point A to point B. But to answer your question, yeah, maybe.
The reason I ask, I understood it's the person on night shift that's on call brings it home. So I don't know how much mileage it gets, you know, might sit there for 2 days or something without going anywhere.
I don't think that's the case.
I'm asking, I don't know.
I don't think that's the case. The only time that the officer will go on call is, when they either go off duty or they've taken an overtime shift and they don't wanna work the entire night for overtime, they'll take it home.
I'm talking about EMS,
Yeah.
Oh, EMS,
the flight car.
yes,
They
the
bring that
fly
home.
car might sit for several days.
Okay, so I'm just saying it doesn't get an awful lot of use like a police car. Something to think about.
That's a decision for you guys to make. I'm sticking with I'm sticking with my plan, but you know, we're gonna do what you tell us.
I would just throw up that the reason we want to get rid of it is we're having continuing mechanical problems with that.
I got a question on that, looking at police cars. I think it's 107, the oldest one. Is got the least amount of miles, how does that happen?
107 is the chief's car, right?
109, 109 is my car, that's all the least amount of miles.
109 is the least amount of miles.
109 is the 2017.
Yeah, that's what I was looking, maybe I get the numbers wrong,
Yeah, 109 has the least amount of miles,
Right,
that's the car of the chief.
so why can't we, if you sort of rotated them as the volume increases on the other cars, within the department, okay? The average right now would be, as written, 55,000 miles on each car. In some cases, that would keep it still under the manufacturer's warranty. So why, I mean, maybe the police should get, police chief should get the oldest car now with the 68,000 on it. Or you see what I'm saying, is why don't we rotate it so that the high volume cars get rotated back around and, you know, sit around to mileage averages out.
Well, we swapped them around for the SRO, Larry, you can speak to that better than.
Well, I don't know that I didn't really understand this question.
Well, you're,
So right now, we have three patrol vehicles.
Yep.
108 is the main patrol vehicle, that's the one that the guy uses at night.
Yeah.
107, the SRO is using, and 107, that has more than, how many miles do you
you
say?
got 78,000 on here right now.
Yeah, that's out of the factory, that's why we had to pay for the rear end in that one, because it was over the mileage. So my initial plan, I mean, even 3 cars, we're still one short, because we had 2 vehicles down for 2 weeks. Everyone was using my car, I was using my truck. And, I mean, we have times where the SRO responds from the school, because he's got his POV, he responded to a domestic to back me up in his own personal vehicle. So I would really like 4 cars, I would like two patrol vehicles, my vehicle, and an SRO vehicle. And the SRO vehicle will be an SRO/spare vehicle. And then you got 2 patrol vehicles, one primary and one whatever, but we can rotate around, so all the miles isn't getting on one vehicle, so we don't have.
That's what I was thinking.
Right, but you can't do that when you have limited vehicles to, I mean, we swapped out 107 for 108, just because the mileage is so high on it.
Oh, that's basically what I'm thinking, is one of them gains so much mileage, swap it down, and move the next one up and start cranking out the mileage again. So it's all averaging out, it's just my thought.
And then you have 3 vehicles with 120,000 miles on them all the time.
Possibly, yes.
Yeah.
Or you lease 3 new ones later when they get high enough.
Well, that's why I'm going into the lease program to try to move that.
Can I clarify what the numbers are? Just back to the fly car, because it looks like it's a $57,000 estimate. You wanna lease it, if I understand.
The EMS car.
The fly.
Yeah, back to the EMS car.
Right, that includes having to put radio,
Yeah,
all that stuff on it, which I actually think we could probably use.
Yeah, it looks like that's the high end of the.
That's definitely the high end. I already have one lease estimate, well, 2 in, that are less than
Okay,
that.
so
So
what
this is,
we had in the operating budget was $87,000 in vehicle lease. Is that for that truck, or is that
EMS had 18,000.
$18,700? I'm trying to understand,
Because when I put that in there, I didn't know for sure what we.
I'm trying to understand, is this in addition to that, and what would the
No,
lease amount be?
No, so if I can continue, I will.
Yeah, let's stick with the fly cars.
I'll get to that. So anyways, she put this in to come out of the capital request, which, once we get to the spreadsheet, you will see I removed
It's not in the spreadsheet.
from the capital request. It's not in there. The lease payment is in her budget of 18,000 a year, which is what I had estimated that it would be based on the limited information that I had when I did the budget.
Okay,
Now I'm getting stronger information that I know I'm gonna be able to reduce that.
right, because even a 60-month lease is gonna be less than that. on a
And the same with the 2
$57,000
police
vehicle.
department vehicles, which we'll get into now.
Right.
I just got another lease quote on those, which is gonna allow me to drop that down as well.
Is it fair to say that if the select board decides that on a going forward basis, at least for the foreseeable future, we're gonna try to lease these things, then it stops being really a capital discussion, and it's
Right.
just a line item in the operating
It would
budget
just
on an
becomes a
ongoing
line item in
basis.
the budget.
Which is
Right.
essentially what this is right now.
Which is
Right.
essentially what it is right now. I kept it in the capital because this is the first year that I've even
Fair.
brought it up. And then, should you decide to go this year, then next year we won't go through.
I'm just trying to clarify, so in all likelihood, the high end number is $57,000, it's gonna be less than that.
Yes,
You estimated 18,000, 7,000 for the lease, it's gonna be a heck of a lot less than that.
yes,
But we don't know precisely what the number is, because we don't have the final lease.
right.
Correct?
Right, and there's still some other budgets that we still, like the police department budget, we still don't know what the police department budget's gonna look like because I haven't finished union negotiations yet.
Got
So we're gonna kind of skip that for a while. And Tom, this is why I kind of rushed this stuff to start with, and then gave myself 4 weeks to play with in March, so we could figure all
I
this out.
understand, I just wanted to net out what number we're talking about. You
Yeah.
look at $57,000, you go, why do we need an extra car, let's use an old car. But in reality, we're talking about a much smaller hit.
You're gonna be looking at a much more, I've gone worst case scenario.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're going to allow you to attach all of these electronics to a leased vehicle?
Yes.
And
Because
you're not going to
it's
pay a
leased,
penalty at the end of the year, or?
no, it's leased to own. And at the end of the year, we own them for $1.
So it's a 5-year, it's a
Yeah,
5-year
and
lease?
it's 3 years, not 1 year.
So the police department, because of trying to rotate them, we put down a 3-year lease. EMS, because it doesn't get the mileage that the police department gets, we put in a 5-year lease. We can get 5 years out of it,
Good, okay.
okay?
Are you gonna look at a scenario where we don't lease to own? Where you do a longer lease and you just continually roll into new vehicles, and we don't end up with high maintenance costs?
They're not as, they're more expensive leasing in the long run.
Okay.
I can get you some figures.
No, I'm just curious, that we're looking at.
They are a more expensive lease in the long run, especially with the police department, because they do get beat up, so.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, any other questions on the fly car?
Okay, so it's the same scenario with the police department vehicles. Now, you'll notice on the spreadsheet that there's 3 vehicles requested on the spreadsheet over 200,000. I've cut that back to 2. Because as Brian mentioned, 1 vehicle is quite low mileage, that we can keep and moving.
So where's that on this, Dennis? You've got $201,000 slotted in. 25.
So if you look at the police department,
Yeah.
which is on the first page of your spreadsheet, all the way down at the bottom, under FY 25 in red, is $201,826.
That's 1 car,
That's 3 cars,
that's 3 cars.
okay? That's his total request.
Okay. All right, good.
In the explanation, you'll see that I cut it to 2, which is 1 Chevy Tahoe and 1 Ford F-150 pickup. And the chief had asked for a pickup last year, and I said, no, I'm not supporting that. We're going to buy two cars this year, 2 cruisers this year. I will support one of them being a pickup. They're a good utility vehicle for the police department in terms of evidence. Some evidence won't fit in a cruiser, and where Larry is acting as the harbor master, we can also use this vehicle as a harbor master vehicle to tow the boat around, put the boat in and out, remove debris from the harbor, and take supplies down there and whatnot. And Larry can defend this better than probably I can. Actually, the pickup is less than another car besides. So, we put 2 of those in there. He has asked to change to Chevy Tahoes, as he explained a few moments ago. Ford is having some serious maintenance issues with their Ford Explorer. They're not even going to make them for a year because they're having so many problems. They're going to go back to the drawing board and try to redesign those. Again, to Brian's, and again, this is a new idea on the leasing, but again, on Brian's point, the Chevy Tahoe is actually a better vehicle for a cruiser because they're made on a truck frame. And we should actually get more use out of them than we do the Ford Explorers. So we might find that at the end of the 3rd year of this lease, we might not want to turn them in. We might not want to lease on the vehicle. We might be able to get another year out of them. It's kind of unknown right at this time. But from the research I've done on this, departments are getting longer use out of the Chevy Tahoe than they are the Ford Explorers. So in the end, this may end up saving us a little bit more.
What's
So
the
is-
drawback of running with Ford 150s instead of cruisers?
All of them?
If the lease is cheaper, the fuel might be different, I don't know, the cost.
I guess I'd have to let Larry speak to that.
Where do you put the president?
Well, there's a four-door
They're forward.
out the back.
I don't know that, I mean, I know there's agencies out there that have the pickups in their fleets. But all of their vehicles aren't pickups. I know the sheriff's on like Somerset County, probably all theirs are pickup trucks. My concern with a pickup truck for a primary patrol vehicle, we have so much stuff in the back if we're gonna do that, I mean, you're gonna have to, everything's gonna be flying around in the back of the truck. With the Tahoe, you have boxes back there, everything's out of the weather, and just more secure. I don't know that I would want, I mean, they say right now, the most trouble-free cruiser, police package cruiser on the market right now is the Ford F-150. Waldeboro's got one, Damerscott's got one, a lot of the agencies around have them. The sheriff's office just moved to, I think they have 2 or 3 Tahoes now. I think the Tahoe would be a better patrol vehicle. If you sat in the passenger seat of one of our Ford Explorers, everything, we've got printers in there, everything's in there, it's just so congested in there and combined. The Tahoe's a better vehicle for that. The other thing too with the pickups and the Tahoes, like Dennis said, they're on the truck frame. The trade-in value is gonna be higher. The resale of it or whatever, I mean, a lot of agencies, a lot of the chiefs are going away from the Explorers because of all the issues they're having. And they're having more issues with the hybrid ones than they are the. But, I don't, what is the price difference between the Tahoe and the pickup?
I think it was around 10,000.
Was pickup 10 grand cheaper?
So,
No, I'm just.
Don't quote me on that, I'd wanna go in the office and look to be sure. It might have been closer than that.
are the issues with the Explorers the reason why, I feel like 2 years ago maybe, we had said we had finally gotten on a good replacement kind of schedule? Is that why we're now off, in terms of we weren't gonna hopefully ever have to do 2 in 1 year?
Well, since I've been here, I've heard the board keep saying, get in a cycle replacement, but that never happens. I remember Dennis said himself when we got the 2 new ones, oh, those are the last 6 years. And, but with the cruisers, I mean, as you can see, the 2021s, so it's 2024 now, the beginning of, so they're just over 2 years. And, you know, and they've got the miles on. I mean, I would like to cycle out a cruiser every 3 years. That's why I thought the lease would be perfect. You get into a 3-year lease, every 3 years, you know, if we could do three leases a year, every 3 years, you're rotating the whole fleet, and you have decent vehicles, like, Sanford PD, every 3 years, they buy a new vehicle. And they pay cash, they buy it outright, and then they're selling their 3 that they had. I mean, they all have under 50,000 miles on them, I was gonna have more than that, but, they're getting rid of them before they start having the real issues. Under 50,000 miles within their time period with Sanford, every problem they have with it is pretty much covered under warranty. So I don't know, I mean, I would like 3 vehicles, I know Dennis wants me to have 2, and I'll go with whatever Dennis says and the board says. I think for me, as you can see, mine's the oldest vehicle on there, it's got the less miles of any of them. So I think an F-150, for me driving it, is definitely gonna last longer than 3 years. You know, and then you've got 5 different guys driving one vehicle. These new vehicles, we was having issues when I started driving one of the new cars. I went in and I said, the tranny's acting up. Well, the new cars, they get familiar with the driver. So then when another driver gets in, everything's different. So it's gotta get used to that new driver, and I think that creates a lot of issues as well. And like Dennis said, the police cars, they're driven pretty hard. But I don't support all pickup trucks, so
Other questions?
I'm just confused still on the numbers. Can we just kind of break down, if you did the 2, that's the 200K, 201K?
That would be all 3.
That would be all 3. All right, so now in the summary that we've got this section that was in yellow down here. It says the total request is 201, so that's for 3 cars.
That's for 3.
And then it says request breakdown FY '24, which is the past, right? I'm just trying to figure out,
Larry's gonna have to explain this, because those are his numbers, not mine.
okay, I just wanna understand, this year, FY '25, if we did 2, or if we did 3, what's the number? And
So if we
then,
do 2 with,
Because I can't tell what the number is.
with, outfitting them completely.
Yeah.
With everything, with new stuff, we're looking at $120,000.
For 2, okay, 120K.
So when I did my figures on it, I estimated each vehicle was 50 grand. So $150,000 for the 3 vehicles.
Okay,
But if you break that down over 3 years, it's 50 grand a year.
okay, so you just did division.
Yeah, so, but, and the other 50 grand would be setting it up. Coastal Electronics gave me a price of how much it costs to set up the towers, how much it costs to set up that, so all that's included in there.
Okay, so the 201 for 3 cars, 120 for 2 cars, and then your plan is to lease it, and you just, at least for our planning purposes, it's a simple divide by 3,
Yes.
so you're talking about 40K.
So I think
This year.
if you've actually taken a peek at the police department
I
budget,
tried to, yeah.
I think the lease payment in there is 42,000.
Okay, so we're talking $42,000
For this year,
for this year.
not out of capital.
Got it.
Right.
That's what I want.
So I'm sorry if it's confusing. What I put in the capital was everybody's initial request. This is what everybody asked for. This is what it comes to, because I want you to see what the requests are each year going out. So you can see that when we get to the spreadsheet, it was $1.4 million, and that's before we even get to the school paving.
No, I'm not picking on you. I think it is very.
No, I know, but I
Very
just
helpful. I just wanted to say.
Okay.
Because, you know, when we sit down on Monday, what number are we arguing about?
Yep.
And we're arguing about 42K for this year.
Yep.
Okay.
And as I said, it may be less than that, because I've gotten some figures recently, so, but use that as your.
And if you get another car, you're throwing another
If you're gonna throw another car,
40K
you're
or
gonna,
so on top of that.
on top.
So you're talking about 42K or 65K.
42, does that include setup then?
Yes.
That's super nice. So that's the hit we're talking about.
Yeah, okay?
Any other questions on Marty?
Yeah, regarding leasing, is it, when you lease these vehicles, are they limited to the number of miles per year?
With the lease we have, we don't turn them back in, we own them, and we own whatever damage is done to them, we own.
It's a special municipal lease.
It's a municipal lease program, so this is not like you going out and leasing a vehicle, it's totally different. And we get much better terms than you can get on a, you know, on a consumer thing. And it takes some of the pressure off our capital account, so.
Any others, please? Okay. Emergency management,
So these actually are the 2 generators for, the community center and for the town office. And I changed it from, Ted had put in the request himself. And I changed it from public works and community center to, emergency management, because I think we can get grants to help pay for these, through FEMA. If we use them as emergency management and say this building and the community center are gonna be emergency shelters, during weather events and prolonged power outages. They won't pay for 100%, but we can pay for 75%. So, I did include these in the capital budget, but only the match for the 25% is in the budget.
So where are they, Dennis? I don't see it in
on the big spreadsheet.
rescue or.
So if you look under Parks and Rec,
It's in Parks and Rec.
It's
Okay.
the third one.
about the third one down, it says generator, and it's 22,500.
Is that all of it?
That's the match, that's the
I
25%.
understand, but that's all of them.
No, that's the Parks and Rec.
So where's
And then the municipal building has its own separate.
22.5, okay, I see it.
Okay?
Is that all of it then?
Those are the 2.
So.
So
$45,000.
$45,000 for 100, whatever it comes to, $150,000 worth of generators, whatever the total is. I mean, it might take us longer to do it this way, because FEMA is exceedingly slow. And if we don't get the grant, then we don't spend the money.
Well, they're advertising now, you know, you can call in about storm damage, so weren't those damaged during a storm?
No. I can tell you right now, that one sitting out there at the end of this town office should have never been bought. That was a piece of huge junk that they spent more money fixing to try to get to run than they would have if they'd just gone out and bought a new one at the time. We've had a lot of issues with it, we just spent how many thousand on it, this,
Six grand, which was a $12,000 bill, and I got a cut it in half.
Costs more to get it running than to buy it.
It did.
it's cost more to maintain the thing, than it just, anyways, it is what it is.
Any questions on the generator?
Wastewater request this year, last year, we asked for and were approved for $84,000 to take some of the pump station controls and move them from underground to above ground. Underground is a confined space issue for our employees. And having them above ground would be much safer for the employees and much easier to access. Turns out when we went to try to do some of this, that the equipment was either in such bad shape because it's so old, or it was just old and obsolete, that we can't move, that moving them just doesn't make any sense. And so Rob has come back and said, in order to do this, we need more money. So he's asked for he's got additional quotes for a total of $200,000 to do this work, so he's asking for the 84 that he already has, plus an additional 160,000. And Rob can speak.
Yes,
Probably much better than I am.
Over Engineering is the engineering company. Not from Stewart. Over Engineering is the company that is doing the evaluation of those 3 pump stations, that the controls would be moved up to street level. And one of their engineers, and they actually sent an additional electrical engineer to see what the scope of the project would be, and roughly could they do it for the 84,000, which I had been quoted by a company that does that work. They move controls, they do all that kind of work, and the company was called Stevens Pump and Electric. They've done work for us before, so I asked them put me in the ballpark, what would it take to move these controls from underground up to ground level? And that was where the $84,000 request came from initially. Over Engineering is the company that's handling the actual, hey, here's the scope of it, and we're actually gonna get down to brass tacks and see what the total amount would be. So when we went into the underground pits where these controls are, many of them are 30 and 40 years old, and it's all analog stuff. And those cans in the ground, basically it's a can in the ground with a ladder going down into it where these controls are housed. They're damp. Some of them are beginning to show corrosion around the seams of where these things were constructed underground. So anyway, they said, look, your equipment is so old and now it's starting to show signs of corrosion. You are gonna probably have to replace these controls anyway, even if they stayed in the ground. So I'm like, okay, can you put me in the ballpark of what this would entail and how much it would be? So that's where the request that you see before you for this year, that's where that came from. Over said, we're putting you right in the ballpark, that's about what it's gonna be. But what it would be now, it's not just moving the controls, underground, we're putting them up above ground so it's safer for our employees. But you're moving into a more modern type of equipment, and they said you'd have to do this anyway. So rather than move old antiquated equipment up and then suddenly, now my equipment's failing because it was in an underground corroding can and now it's exposed, it's gonna be above ground, and new modern controls have weatherproof enclosures. I didn't wanna spend money and then have to spend a bunch again. So if we're gonna have the company out there moving this stuff up, they might as well move stuff up and put new controls in there. And that was why I had made that request. And it was unfortunate that we discovered this, but I'd rather have discovered it and then not have to come back to you next year and say, hey, this is an emergency, I've gotta have this done now. So I'm trying to do it before it becomes, critical equipment failure. So that was why, yes.
Sure.
So the 84 has already been appropriated,
Yes.
and now we need to add the 116.
Yes,
Okay,
I'm so
thank you.
sorry.
I can't figure out.
Yeah, so, do you have anything that would show us what that would look like to have those? Do you have anything that would show us what that would look like, to have those put up over ground?
Oh,
Are they- is it
you're
just
talking about the diagrams and everything?
Yeah, is it just?
Over has not completed the final, drawings and everything,
Okay.
but that has all, it's close. So I will be able to provide something.
So is it just a panel with
No.
meters and things on
Well,
it, or is
it-
it in a building?
What it will be in an enclosure, and the controls will be in weather tight, all that. But it will be also modern digital type equipment.
Right.
It's not the old analog, you're getting to these cans, everything's a switch. Or we have a lot of mercury switches, old mercury switches down there. The mercury is in them, I mean, our guys are, I'm not saying they're gonna be, it's toxic for them, but it's bad enough you gotta go down there, and these old switches are down there. So, there wouldn't be any of the mercury switches up above ground.
So Rob, are they essentially, is it like a lock box that has the equipment in it?
Yes, and you'll see, for example, over at, do you know where the water district is? The water district
Yes.
is on the Birch Point Road. It'll be a control box and things that, like what we have there. It would be a big panel, with the weatherproof enclosures, but it would have modern digital, readouts, pump controls, alarms, all that stuff.
And all of this new equipment is going to work with whatever new facility becomes?
Yes, in the cases of everything, what probably will happen, in those cans, some of the pumps are in the can. They're down the bottom, and the pipes come through the wall, and the pumps are down there. And everything that controls them is also down there. So what will probably happen is, we can keep the pumps are in decent shape, but all the controls are coming up and out. So if we did need to work on the pump, we can always pull it out of there. But they will be remaining in the can. The cans will not actually go away because the pumps are piped into the base down there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
This will be one more thing for a certain individual to complain about.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, no.
So that's one part of Rob's
Oh, no.
request, and then the other part of Rob's request that I also support, we do have 4 FEMA applications pending for more generators for our pump stations. One of those is, if we get it, will be at 90% paid by FEMA, the other 3 will be at 75%.
Yes.
So Rob is asking for the $66,000, it's a 25% match on those.
Yes.
Looking at his current budget and where he's at this particular point in time, I think at a minimum, we could probably take half of that out of his budget. So I've reduced the request out of the capital down to 33,000.
Okay.
If he stays on track with his budget this year, we might be able to actually pull all of it out of his budget and not touch the capital at all. But it's too soon for me to make that determination right now.
Yes. Can I make a comment about the generator, FEMA grants, which we've been applying for? I think recent storms and recent, flooding has caused an avalanche of applications to FEMA for generators. And, about a week ago or so, there was something that was in an email to you that we had forwarded to Olver. And the request from FEMA was, hey, you need to give us a bunch of engineering information to apply for the one at pump station number 14. And we've gotten some grants before, but we've never had to submit, hey, what's the calculation that was done to figure out what size generator you need? So suddenly there's an additional application questionnaire that we have to fill out. And the one for pump station 14, I thought we had been awarded apparently, we were not yet. So anyway, I just have a gut feeling now that statewide appeals for generators have just gone through the roof, and now they're trying to cut off the tighten the funnel of funds for that.
So I had emailed Heather yesterday, and because Mandy had gotten to me and said, I don't think we can make the deadline on this.
Okay.
So I emailed Heather yesterday and said, we're gonna withdraw this application.
Okay.
And she emailed me today and said, I've already asked FEMA for an extension.
Oh.
Because if we withdraw that, that money does not go to anybody else in the state of Maine for a generator. It goes back somewhere else.
Oh.
So we might as well, so if we're gonna do it, we might as well do it, because we're just, it just, the state loses the funds. It just doesn't go to somebody else. So, I didn't get a response back today on the extension, but, she seemed pretty confident that we would get it, so.
Okay.
So we're back to, I think, back to full work.
Okay, and I spoke to one of the suppliers of generators that we've gotten already, which is Machinery Service Company, Ken Bowden's company, and he said he can get me those calculations, so, okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions on these two?
So is it correct to say then, just to repeat that, on our spreadsheet, we're taking that 66 down to 33?
Down to 33.
And you're gonna add in 33 to the operating budget that's not in
I'm
there?
talking about his existing budget this year. I'm talking about his existing budget this year. I'm not adding anything to
Oh,
his.
okay, so that
this next
stays
year.
where it is, and this just goes down by 33K.
Yes.
Got it,
Yeah.
thank you.
And then last week, they wanted us to run the generators on windmills or something.
So,
I don't know. No, I don't even want to go there.
Public Works paving.
Ted's only request this year is $500,000 for paving. Which would be,
Brown Road.
Brown Road, Chonky Neck, Fowl Hill, Indian Road, Oak Ridge, which we wanted to do last year and just didn't get to. Old Sheepscot Road and Pinewood Drive. We're chipping away at these pretty well. Next year, probably, we get through this, we can start working on some of the downtown streets. Right now, we're concentrating on some of the worst long roads, that present the greater safety hazard and liability to the town. So we're trying to get those knocked out, and then we can start working on, some of the downtown. Now, when it comes to paving, John Mary's here from the school. John had put in a request that is not in here currently for $332,000, right?
Well, the paving is $250. The paving is $250,
But the request was more than that.
yes.
Do some work at the schools. And I'll let him explain that better than I can. And Kim is online and she can explain a little better about where their fund balance is and why this may need to come to us instead of us.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, so I think that, I mean, we do our undesignated or unallocated fund balance right now is somewhere between 1.2 and 1.5 million. And we will, when it's time to commit, we will take a portion of that to put into our own capital improvement fund, which we can use for paving. We have other projects. John's got a list of things that we want to do. I think that the reason, and I'm going to defer to John on this, but I think the reason that he put this request into the town is because we want to make sure that when you guys bid all of your paving, we get in on it wherever the money comes from, so that the work can get done at the same time and the work can get done for a better rate, right? So if you're going to hire I don't know if you're going to hire Crooker or someone to do a lot of paving, we want to make sure that our high school parking lot can get in on that. And then we can figure out, whose fund balance pays. It's all So Bob Blagden, it's all our money, right? It's everybody's fund. So depending on where we take it, we just want to make sure that we get that quoted at the same time, because it would make the most sense financially, I think. I'm not sure. I defer to both of you guys really on that.
Well, I mean, it comes from the left pocket, or it comes from the right pocket, as you said, it's taxpayer dollars either way, so.
So a little bit of back history, the interim town superintendent last year, and Dennis and I, we talked about trying to include the school's payment request, in with the town. I worked with the road commissioner. We did have one company come up and take a look at what we wanted to do. I think it was more a timing issue that things kind of got screwed up. We were late getting a request in or something, so, Ted did find somebody to take care of his paving, last year, so, I've been working with the new superintendent, and I've met with Dennis a few times. It only makes sense to me, as a lifelong resident here, that, if the town is gonna do a project and the school is gonna do the same thing, why don't we collaborate, put it together and try to get a better rate to do it. And based on the list that Dennis just provided on what Ted wants to do this year, the budget price that's on my first item here, is from a local contractor. And he historically, is usually the lower bidder on the past projects that I've done at schools and paving. So, and I do want to point out also that, this budget is for soup to nuts. It's an 1.5-inch overlay. It's digging out the sidewalks, putting from 4-foot sidewalks to 5, so our snow removal equipment is more beneficial to the guys. It's new curbing for the entire side of the high school. So that's pretty much why the price is what it is. I've considered on, maybe scaling back. I'd rather not break it up into half, so thirds, it would be tough to do. But in order to get started, we could do something like that. So I think my goal at this time is to get the schools work on an RFP along with the towns, see if we can get a better rate, and balance what we have here, and have the school listed separately on a bid as you folks get the bids in, and then go from there and see what we can do. Items number 2 and 3 on this list are more specialized. The second item is the running track surface up back behind the high school. It does need 2 layers of rubber granules. We're a year past doing that. It's on a maintenance schedule. The inside lane of the track is 1/4 mile, so it's quite a distance. It should be done every 5 years, 5 to 7 years. And this year here, we're a year past due. The track gets used a lot. I did a lot of patching last year. I had to call a guy in to do patching for one reason or another. Honestly, the track is used for things that it's not supposed to. Lawn chairs, bicycles, tricycles, pads. We're cleaning feces off the track quite often. So wear and tear, we have a tremendous interest in the track teams at the schools this year, and other schools are coming to use our track to practice. So it's getting a lot of wear compared to what it used to. And the last item here is the tennis court. It does need crack repair, it does need resurfacing. It's got to be recoated with acrylic that'll stand the wear and tear and the weather. The community center the last couple of summers has been using it for pickleball. So that is getting a lot more use. And I want to do my job by trying to keep up with this maintenance type stuff that can end up being a safety issue for the users if we're not maintaining it properly. So that's my main goal here. So,
Can I just clarify, but you're asking to put the bids for the paving together?
Yep.
But then the track, that's not.
No, those are separate.
Okay.
Those are separate.
Okay.
As far as any combination with the town, that's more of a specialized thing. There's a tacking process, there's a process for laying the rubber granules out and lining and striping.
So process-wise, this stuff gets approved at their annual meeting? Is that how, at the school meeting? How does the school?
Well, I guess that's the question that still needs to be answered.
Yeah.
Which pocket is it coming out of?
Okay, so that's not decided. But putting economies of scale, you wanna kind of do the bids together, put that aside.
Right.
Then the question is, what are we being asked to do here?
Yeah.
And that's not clear yet?
It isn't clear to me which pocket it's coming from. As
Why doesn't
whether
it come out of
they
both
want.
markets, one bid,
Right, it's one bid, but it doesn't necessarily mean the school is paying for their share out of their capital fund
why not?
and leaving us alone.
Why is that?
Why not?
Why not?
Why pay for our own share?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, that's what needs to be determined. That's where I'm not clear.
That determination hasn't been made as far as I know.
That's why it's not included in our capital fund, because there has been talk that it come from the town's capital fund and not the school's capital
We
fund.
come from both capital funds, one bid, two bills.
Yeah. So you got two issues, you got economies of scale, wanna get a good bid, and then you've got how it comes out. They have, what is it, $1.2 million, Kim said?
Yeah, 1.2 to 1.5.
And is that just unallocated?
But I have a question.
I just trying to figure out why. Yeah, let me ask my question first, if I might. So they got 1.2 million in unexpended budgets in effect. Is there any other fund, capital fund that they have in the schools?
Kim, you wanna answer that?
Was the question, is there another capital fund at the school?
So that.
No, there
There's a-
isn't. But I have a question, well, I've got a comment and a question. The comment is because of the grant that the town received in like 1984, the Land Water Conservation Fund grant, all of the parking lots and the tennis courts and the track and everything are public lands, and they have to be maintained as public lands, and they actually belong to the town. So there's that. So we're maintaining it. I'm hoping that we can get a grant from Land Water Conservation Fund this year that maybe can offset some of that paving. And we're talking about an outdoor basketball court in part of the parking lot, which we can't do anything with any of that stuff without their permission. So that's the comment. But then my question is, the interest on our undesignated fund balance never gets redeposited back into a fund for the school that I'm aware of. Where does that go, Dennis? Is that part of the interest that the town's fund balance is earning? And actually, just to clarify, where is our fund balance? Does it live inside the town's fund balance?
Yes,
And
so the answer to your questions are both yes. The interest is staying here. I believe, I wasn't aware that the interest on your fund balance wasn't coming to you, so that's just a bookkeeping thing. But all of the funds are in a single account.
okay. Because I think if it's we can talk about that in a separate meeting, but I'm pretty certain that the interest hasn't come back to the town, the school side. So if we could get that and have our undesignated fund balance actually earn interest, we could build our capital fund and keep it rolling year to year. And that's something I would like to do, so that, you know, when we have these projects, we've got our funds. And we've got projects that we're planning for 3 years down the line and 5 years down the line. So it would be good if we were able to manage those funds. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that's just a bookkeeping thing that we'd have to meet with, Kathy and probably.
Can it be
Bob.
retroactive? Can it be a retroactive bookkeeping thing?
Go for it.
Don't push your luck.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it.
Retroactive to when you got the job, how about that?
We'll talk about it, but so I think what Bill was saying is, you know, obviously one bid makes more sense. I pay per hours, you pay for yours.
Yeah, I think everybody agrees one bid together makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure, not.
I think the town has done that before in the past, but it's many, many years ago.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time, but I think that used to be the practice, that the bidding would all go out
Yeah.
together and the school would pay the school share and the town paid the township.
So what happened to us last year was, we did not go out to bid until after town meeting, when we knew we had the money. And that proved to be a mistake for us, because everybody had already booked their payday. You know, we didn't get any bids. I mean, Ted had to actually go out and put a gun to somebody's head and say, you know, come pave our roads. So we can't do that this year. We're already decided we're going out to bid. As soon as I gotta get your stuff.
Yeah.
And we're sending that bid out contingent on, and it'll be in the bids, that it's contingent on board approval in June. So at least know that we can line somebody up.
They're very busy.
Because they are busy. We just ran out of weather, last year weather got us, that's why over it's gonna get done.
That was the problem, they had too much on their plate, and no one wanted to bid on it. There was too much there. So, King and B said if you take off the schools, he'll bid on the parking on the roads.
But this year we'll get it in, and get it early, get it done early.
So I can get information to Ted. Yeah.
So assuming we do this, could we roll in the parking lot at the Wisconsin Community Center? And get a lower price on that?
We're going to have a conversation about that, yeah, that's up to you guys.
Yeah, I'm just saying, you could probably get a lower price if you roll that in too.
But we're getting up there in the capital budget is still over what we should be taking out of it every year, but it's in here for discussion, we're asking you what you want with it.
Okay, so at this point, what do you need from us? Okay.
So how does that decision, so where and how is that?
Yeah.
Because so the net is on paving, you've got like 2 of the 3 items here so far. You've got this $500,000 Ted asked for, you've got,
$500,000 here, you've got $250,000
and then
here,
there's another line item on
and
there.
then there's another one in here for the community center.
Is it fair to say that unless, okay, maybe it's not fair to say, because we've asked the question a couple times, is that we're gonna approve the $500K for Ted and whatever is decided on the community center? And we're not being asked to approve this now because you haven't figured out if we're gonna pay for it.
Well, I don't know that you're gonna approve any of this tonight.
No. When
not tonight, but he
we
means-
vote, when we
Yes,
vote.
yes, once we figure out where it's, which pocket it's gonna come from.
Because we need to know that, right?
You know, you're potentially looking at 800,000 in paving this year, if it all comes from us. 500 there, 350 there,
Start talking about real money.
yeah.
Okay.
But to that point, Tom, as John and I just had that discussion, is that historically, when the town has been together, the school paid for the schools and the town pays for the towns.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I'm just trying to understand, we're gonna vote in 2 weeks, but what are we voting on exactly, and what's the
Yeah.
process? And if you guys, as a select board, and we just recommend, if you say, look, we'll pay for the town stuff, we're not gonna, you go find another way to fund that, does that get approved at their annual meeting? Is that where, so for instance, the stuff other than paving, the 95K and the 12K, does that get approved at the school's annual
At the
meeting?
school budget.
Okay, so it would go to their process if you guys decide
Mhm.
no mas. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you
Sorry
for
for
listening.
asking stupid questions, but it is.
No, I don't know, there's no such thing as a small question.
It's good to have it clear. It's good to have it, but historically, it was done that way because people always wanted to know how much the town, how much the school cost in total.
Makes perfect sense. We've got very different administrative models and
Exactly.
not a lot of oversight on everything crossing over, so what you said makes perfect sense to me. I just want to understand.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right, community center, parks and rec.
Obviously, the resource request of $3.5 million is not intended to be something that we entertain, it is just intended to, get you thinking about, whether or not we should actually expand the community center. In terms of space, with this building here, we are gonna have to do something up there, as I mentioned before. I put money in our budget to do a needs assessment, try to figure out what that is, so this is something that, you know, will help address some of this request that, he should, that he needs to spend up there, and I'm not saying that we do, or we don't, I just don't know at this time. He and I have talked for the last couple of years about putting a daycare center up there is definitely a need for one. But right now, we just don't have a place to do it. And Kim is still online, so I can say that, you know, I considered kicking her out of that building up there so we could use that building for a daycare center because it's right next to the playground. And I think we could actually, the town could probably help pay for the community center or something like that. But we're not talking about doing that this year. But it's something that I think we really need to spend some time on.
So could I just ask why it is what is it that makes it the town's responsibility to run a daycare center rather than a private entity coming in and running a daycare center?
Because private entities don't seem to want to do it. And that's one of the reasons why since COVID, just a lot of them have just completely shut down. And my idea of one of the community centers there, too, and this is all just discussion, it's nothing.
Well, sure, no, it's just, I just want to understand where the concept of the town owning a childcare center comes from.
You know, it's a community service. And if we can help our own community with daycare issues so that people can go to work, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I've also, you know, Dorian and I have also discussed that we could use it as a benefit here for town employees. To help attract town employees, we have on-site daycare. You know, we have people now that have very young kids that probably would like to take their lunch hour and go do whatever they need to do with their kids. I'm not saying we do it for free, but perhaps a reduced rate, as a benefit to attract and keep employees, especially those that have kids. But again, I mean, this is just spitballing, that's really all.
Also including teachers. Teachers may have a lot of kids.
I mean, yeah, because it didn't have to be just for the town, it certainly would be for the school, but, you know, for the school employees as well, so.
Well, I think I'd be in favor of it if it was self-supporting.
Yeah, and you know, we certainly have to come up with a business plan and run the numbers. And
Yeah,
all of
exactly,
that,
because I can't see the whole town-wide paying for the decision.
No, that wouldn't be,
That's why I'm just being clear.
no, that wouldn't be the intention.
But if you did have it to be a break even or revenue generator, you could also argue it helped with economic development. If you want
Yeah,
companies to move
it would
here, and they're gonna move here,
Mhm.
if the schools are attractive to people, and there are other amenities. Now, this was another big thing that's gonna lose $500,000 a year, so it seems like it would be a non-starter, but.
Yeah,
If you did have a business plan, it'd probably be worth looking at.
It doesn't need to make a profit, just break even.
Right, so that's something I think can be passed to the new economic development committee as we start making our plans going forward, the long-term plans. You know, let's just include this in here and see if this is a feasible, if it's a feasible thing. So that's what that's intended to be.
Appreciate it.
The next item he has looking at is, repair and rebuilding the tennis and basketball courts down at the elementary school. Those are owned by the town, not the school. And we all, I don't know if you know, football has become a really big thing lately. But anyways, so we think they would be fairly well utilized. I believe that perhaps, and again, you know, because we're only throwing stuff out tonight for you guys to consider, I think we probably, between in-kind contributions and some budget, we might be able to do this out of this year's budget. I'm not confident of that just yet. So I left it in the capital to look at, but we could possibly do that this year with funds we already have.
May I just ask why you're at this, so you've got 40K on the spreadsheet for tennis courts, is that for pickleball? Or is that, what is?
Well,
Did I screw that up?
I'm not sure.
Oh, I might have, no, that's.
No, tennis courts is 45.
The
Tennis
sign,
courts is 45, 40 is the
Sign.
sign, which we haven't got to yet.
Yeah, we're gonna get to.
Which we'll get to now, and like he asked last year for a big digital sign,
Yeah.
and I think we need a digital sign, I just think there's other areas that asking for 10 years.
Are these the same tennis courts as the school was just talking about? So they're different tennis courts?
These are the tennis courts down in the elementary.
I don't play tennis, so I don't know, but, okay.
Yep. I think the sign money can, if we're gonna, if we designate the place as a emergency shelter, I think we can get FEMA funds, for a sign. To be honest, I think you said, you're gonna get a digital sign, you can sell advertising on it, and raise the money that way, or fundraisers or something,
it's a lot of money for sign.
I just, the same conversation as last year,
can you do it contingent on getting the grant?
that it's there. Yes,
What if you did,
if the board's, you guys so desire to put it on a warrant and say, if we get a grant, we won't spend it, yes.
you're not gonna get 100%, but let's say 75, if 75% of it could be raised outside by grants or donations, we would put in 25%, $10,000 or whatever.
That's an option.
Yeah, so Dennis, if they were to write a grant and get $40,000 to put in a sign, does it really have to go on a warrant to be voted to accept it? I mean, can't the board of
No.
selectmen just vote to
No,
accept the grant?
so that's how, I don't think that's what Marty's
No, what I'm
asking.
saying is I doubt if a grant would pay for the whole thing, so write the grant contingent on outside raising, let's say 75% of the funds through a grant or donations or whatever.
Right, the warrant
The
article?
warrant article read that
That the town,
The town would be
the
willing
town
to
would
pay
fund
$10,000
$20,000 contingent on them getting the other.
right, by a grant or whatever.
That's what you guys decide you want to do, yeah. we can do that.
This,
And then his next request, is for paving the parking lots. Now, as I put in my explanation, I think the priority for paving needs to be those areas where we have safety issues, especially on the roads and, maybe in schools. I'm gonna put a caveat in here and say that, that parking lot was never completely paved to start with. What's there is just the first base coat. It's not gonna last forever. We keep pumping it down the road like we do, we're gonna end up spending a whole lot of money on possibly having to redo it. But it's not really, the parking lot is not a safety concern, it's more of a convenience thing right at the moment. So I am prioritizing the roads over the parking lots. I do support, however, in redoing the bricks. To the entrance to the place. We have some safety concerns there, there's some trip hazards there. There's some issues with ADA access and getting up over the granite curbing. Some of the sidewalks have ruts in them this deep, which are an issue. So I do support moving ahead with that. He estimated 10,000 to do that. We spent way more than that doing the Veterans Memorial out here, so I up that myself to 25,000 because I think it's more realistic. More realistic cost estimate for doing that out there. So.
is that still the whole length of the front of the building?
No, it comes in. Well, I'm also talking about repaving the walkways. I mean, we spent.
Oh, maybe the walkways also. Okay.
We spent out here
We spent 12,000, so that was with public works on it.
Yeah, so that's paving the walkways and the brick.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Because some of the walkways are in pretty bad shape.
Yeah, because I get a grant at the library, from Stephen Tabitha King a year and a half ago, to do the walkway to the children's room at the library, and even building that property up to a level and stuff, that was 25. I mean, that was a lot more work than that down there.
But even if the brickwork out front needs to get done, and if it ends up being more, then we can't get the sidewalks done, we'll figure something else out.
Question, Dennis, so just if we don't do the 120K, which if you don't support for the community center paving this year, it has to be done at some point.
It's gotta be done at some point.
So we're kicking the can, you can argue, we're kicking the can down the road a year. And when we do that, we wouldn't include it in a larger bid. Right, unless we had more paving we wanna do.
Well, if you want, it's certainly more paving to do next year.
Okay, so maybe we would.
Roads over here.
All right, if we approved it next summer, then you've got a lead time before you can get people to come in and do the work. So you're really talking about more than a year out. Are we okay with the condition of it as it currently stands, not being fixed for a year and a half or 2 years?
You know,
That's the question.
Dwayne's not okay with it. I think Ted,
It's gonna cost us more. And it's gonna get worse.
it is, you know, but again, so my whole point with doing these giant spreadsheets that you're writing out is showing you that year in and year out down the road, we have a lot of stuff. And it costs a lot of money to maintain all this stuff. Now, all the stuff that is in these spreadsheets will not necessarily come from capital.
Right.
I get this basically from our insurance list.
Yeah.
And because it's all the stuff we insure, and the smaller stuff that we don't insure is pretty much disposable stuff. My point for all of this is to show you that, you know, there's a lot of stuff here, and it just grows every year as to how much it costs us to maintain all this stuff. And where's the breaking point? Where do we look at it and say, you know, we need to rein this in, or we need to bring in a whole lot more businesses and diversify this tax base, which we are trying to do.
Yeah.
But which is coming first?
Yeah, I think it's super helpful, and I don't mean to kill the agenda time-wise, but this is a scenario where, you know, I'm kind of a hawk on the spending, but this is a scenario where I could play the devil's advocate, right? And say, I don't know what paving costs increase on an annual basis. But this is some percentage, it's gonna increase between now and 2 years from now. The only benefit to keeping the 120K in our account is you're gonna accrue a return on the investment. You know, is the amount you're gonna earn on 120K offset the increase? Probably not.
Probably not.
So the way I look at it, just from a kind of a back of the envelope financial analysis standpoint, is by not doing it, we probably just lost money on this one. I wouldn't say that's the case on everything, but on this one, I do it now. That's just my 2 cents.
The paving, the parking lot?
The 120K, yeah.
Yes.
I agree.
Could Ted come up here so I could ask him a question about the paving?
Sure.
So he can be on the microphone and people can hear what's being said. He's sitting in the back and nobody's hearing what you're saying at home. I know you don't want to.
He hides in the corner.
Do it, be brave.
Every time.
So Ted, the scope of the business at the community center parking lot, right, the scope of the work, is it going to change between what would have to be done this year? Would it be a bigger job if you put it off another year, or is it essentially the same process? Are we talking about grinding it all out, reputting a new base?
Not now, if you're gonna get it, you better get it now, because the weather we've been having is nothing's freezing, it does freeze a little, opens up, the cracks open, the water gets in, the top freezes, and it's pushing top apart.
So is the parking lot right now in a condition where they're going to have to tear out the, well, so are they gonna have to tear out the pavement and reinstall new base?
Right now, they
Can they grind it and go over it?
go over it and grind the edges.
Or just grind the edges and tar over it?
They'll grind the edges and bad spots.
And does this include a top coat?
it will be a top coat and, well, it depends, we can just put a base coat, or we can finish it off and do a overlay.
So
What's the 120?
which
The
one
one
is
thing
you giving me the estimate?
He's got that estimate, I'm not familiar with that estimate he got.
Okay.
If it was from Crooker, they done overlay.
Yeah, it's for,
That's
it's an
true.
overlay and that's
There
for,
must be overlay in there.
and it's for 120.
Yeah. That seems all right, 'cause the last time I was involved in it, it was only 80,000, that was 2 years ago.
Okay. Okay. Then I'm gonna say I agree with Tom.
I do too.
I think we're gonna make less interest on that money than you're going to have an increase in price of doing it next year, and I don't think waiting another year.
Yeah, I'm super concerned about the 11 and where that goes and all that stuff, but, 4 years ago when I started doing the budget, the argument was, hey, we've been kicking stuff down the road, we're kicking the can down the road, and I think you're doing the right thing, Dennis. Again, I'm not picking on you at all, but I think this is one where, I would pull the trigger.
Penny wise and pound foolish.
Well, what I'm trying to do with the town roads, I'm getting the ones that if they go any longer, they're gonna need a grinder, they're gonna need major work. And then you're talking the whole 500,000 for Indian Road.
Right.
Okay.
Right,
That's helpful.
okay.
Thank
you.
If we handle all these projects,
Appreciate it.
Crooker can come down on the price, if you give all these projects to him, since you've got all his equipment here.
Yeah.
That's the
But
idea.
Yeah,
if we get them early, what happened last year, when I got with John, and we were putting in for it, we were waiting for the boat to come out, and we were too late in the year, they already had stuff. They couldn't work us in. And then all the bidders dropped us because there was too much for them to do. So if we get early this year, big chunk of work.
and again, I'm saying is, there's a value to doing all this at one time.
There is a value.
For him, because you don't have to haul his equipment from here to Wall.
There, and the tonnage, cheaper on tonnage, the more you get,
Yeah.
but
Makes sense.
hopefully it should work out.
I'm gonna be cognizant of people's time. Can we talk about what our schedule is moving forward before we go into? I'm just trying to plan it out in my head.
You're the chair.
Okay, well. Yeah, therefore, we're going to talk about what the next steps are after tonight. We may go back to community orgs, but I'd like to do that first. So, I'm looking at you because you've got the deadline, so.
Well, what is the deadline?
You get, everybody gets the place.
Lie to us.
No,
So the deadline for us to have, we have to have everything done, and finalized by the 28th.
by 3/28,
March 28th.
and that's.
Yes, Linda has to have everything by then, so she can start, working on the ballot. So,
The newspaper said 27th.
well, I have been saying the 27th, but I'll give to the 20th.
I just read the news.
So you already have a regular selectmen's meeting on the 5th and the 19th.
I will call you. Thank you.
Okay, so then it's basically a question of how many more meetings do we want in terms of any other further discussion of various departments or capital items? In other words, how much and discussion do you want after tonight before you're voting? Go.
One.
So what else has to be covered?
Revenue and community orgs and anything else?
Yeah, we can have, the revenue won't take that long, so we can do that tonight. Community organizations shouldn't take that long tonight. So then you'll have everything at that point in front of you, to do your deliberations. Budget committee can meet whatever they need to meet to discuss this. You guys, I think 2 more meetings would be prudent. Unless you're really comfortable with everything that's here, we still have to get through the police department union negotiations to finalize that, but I mean, that's one budget that can actually be approved in a regular selectmen's meeting if it needs to be.
So if you're gonna stick with the Tuesday nights, you have the 12th and the 26th. The 26th is really drawing it.
The 26th is a little close, I would rather not. do
Yeah,
that.
okay.
How about 6 and 13 Wednesday nights?
6 and 13?
It's okay.
When do you want to do the final voting then?
Well, it would be nice if we could do it on the selectmen's meeting of the 19th.
Yeah.
So that we didn't have to schedule yet another meeting, but if everybody's all set, you could actually do it on the 13th.
I can't be here on the 13th.
If you feel comfortable on it. So, I mean, you can set the 13th as being your final meeting, but that still leaves you with time if something comes up that you feel like you need to do something different.
Why don't we do the sixth, which is a Wednesday, and then the 12th, which is a Tuesday?
I'd rather do that.
Oh, we have a joint meeting on the 12th.
I didn't
Budget
put
climate.
that on there.
Oh, I know, actually.
Climate
Waterfront.
workshop,
Yeah.
that might be a bit for just trying to cram it all
Yeah.
at one time.
You cannot do the 13th, Tom?
And I can't Zoom either on that night, I'm afraid, so. I cannot, just not be here as long as we're voting. As long as we're not voting on that night, somebody else can handle it, for budget.
Are you guys planning to do your votes before?
Well, last year we did, and we're gonna meet on the 4th, which is next Monday, because we thought we'd probably be substantially through most of this stuff tonight. So we're going to do that. We will not have seen the police budget yet, but, so we won't be voting then. Now, given the timeline, it might make sense for us just to do it back to back, like we did the year before last, whenever you can hear votes. So I'm thinking no.
Okay, what if we say the 6th and see where we go there, and we can hold the 13th as an optional if we feel like we need it. And we wouldn't be voting at that point,
Right.
so if you had missed that,
That'd be fine.
how's that?
Well, the budget committee doesn't have to be with the board if the board is voting, so.
They don't have,
No.
We don't have to be.
You just,
We have to vote. We could vote separately.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is if it would be easier for you all if you had it the day before, or the day after, or something like that, and then you
So why don't we just circle up, because we don't have Bob or Don here tonight, we'll check their schedules, and see if it makes sense for us to.
I'm just thinking to give Linda as much time as possible with this to get it done.
but let's lock in the 6th.
Yep.
For our next joint meeting.
Temporarily put in the 13th.
Yeah, hold the 13th if needed.
I think that's the plan. Oops, throwing my pen at Terry. Missed.
And in theory, we'll vote on the 19th.
Yep, see how comfortable everybody is on the 6th and.
Good. Alright. Do revenue?
We still gonna have our meeting on the 4th.
Probably makes sense for us to do.
Yeah, I'll send in something.
Probably makes sense for us to at least spend an hour and just compare notes on what we heard so far.
Okay, well, we're gonna take just a 5-minute break.
No, you're all set.
Thank you.
I know this guy decided they want to.
Where's revenue?
We're
I get,
Under
of course, my mind made up already on what.
You opened yourself up.
I know. So you're on.
You missing that, Pat?
It was done, but I don't know. Stay for the whole thing.
Yeah. Right. Oh, no. Yeah.
I want to call
I don't propose any cuts on revenue.
I don't know about that, Marty. Might not be a good stance.
Such a long time sitting in. It's always. I'm feeling that yoga class I taught this morning. Holy crap. All right. Money.
Oh, safe after the storm.
Oh, yeah, it's out.
I know it's out. It's on a tree fall.
Under control. Yep. Yep, all good. Goes in back in the water on the 6th of May. I think we're counting the days right here.
No.
Oh, you know, you sound like you're struggling a bit.
Got some line like broke here.
Yeah.
Get two discs for the nine that they go through your throat. Oh, they do. Ever since the most stuff. So they always, someone gets caught.
Feels, yeah, swollen or something. Well, that's a bummer.
Getting better.
Yeah.
I sound like Ben Crosby.
Yeah, you do. I was thinking you got that husky voice, you know?
Sing us a song.
They'll be performing later tonight.
I was thinking more of Lou Rawls, but,
In New York, they have a who played outside nightclubs, says performing.
yep.
They had one on the magazine anyway, it shows us cross it like that. It says, one in our
All right.
Come on, man.
Then you could just go to bed after this.
This is my business.
Bedtime. I'm not even looking what time it is. Hey, Terry, why aren't you at the cats meeting?
Yeah.
Why aren't you at the cats meeting? Why aren't you at the cats meeting?
Oh, I wonder why.
Neither am I.
They actually came, I think Heather was at that meeting. I think you finished the cat meeting.
Hey, your last budget meeting, you had donuts.
I didn't see you back there.
I was sitting at home watching you.
Oh,
I'm like, what?
That
He said, I should have brought my juice with me.
I didn't
didn't
you just got out of the community center breakfast.
Oh.
Anything exciting?
I ate one of your treats. That's pretty good. I was ready to vote for anybody.
Sorry. Put you in a happy mood.
Spend it, it looks good.
I know they're doing that.
Yes, I should die.
That's what we told me,
Well, we're hoping to.
Oh, I know, and I forgot about that.
I went over there and got it, took it on and put it in the microwave. Yeah, it was pretty good. Or is that your chair that's squeaking? Oh, no. That's exquisite.
It just started doing it. It wasn't doing it before.
Until that.
They said last week.
They know where he would get through school. Because he would take lectures. Well, it's not gonna be the right idea.
It's only about 4. That's what Dennis got me.
I love it. Great, and should have brought the M&Ms tonight. This was the night.
Yeah, I actually.
If whoever gets it, we're gonna have, well, yeah. What's gonna happen? Shall we have it on the
One
sixth?
year ago today.
Oh, yeah, already bring the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think you got a commission for a while? Are you thinking you got a commission for a while?
This Monday.
Sorry, it's Monday, it's one day kind of.
Yeah, it's gonna be in the afternoon,
All right,
1 o'clock in the
we
afternoon.
are back. And going to revenue.
So there is the revenue spreadsheet, just like the budget breakdown spreadsheet. Shows you what we brought in 2023 in actual dollars, what we projected in 24, what we collected year to date, which is pretty healthy, and what we're projecting for 2025. Now, for the last few years, because our fund balance has been so poor, I've been fairly conservative in estimating revenues. I wasn't quite so conservative this year. For instance, state revenue share has been quite healthy the last few years, and I've estimated somewhere around $650,000 a year in state revenue sharing. Last year, we got almost $850,000, and this year they're projecting almost $900,000. The danger in state revenue sharing is it's great when it's great, but when it's not, it's not. And you know, what the state giveth, they can take it away. If the economy goes sour, because state revenue sharing is based on income tax and sales tax, revenue sharing drops. So if I estimate 100% of our revenue sharing and something happens, we have a revenue shortfall. So I never estimate 100%. When we move further this year, around 15% on state revenue sharing based on their projections. So that gives me a little bit of leeway there if something does happen. So we'll throw that out there. We'll get to that in a second. Airport revenue, there's this little quirk in Trio. I don't know what it is. We can't figure it out, but the fuel sale for airport always shows up as a 0. Which wasn't, or some odd number, it wasn't $442 in 2023, it was actually $32,038, so you could add that to the bottom line. And this does not count the property taxes that get paid out there. Now, if you look at your airport budget, on the charts in the figures that I give you there, I include the property tax that's paid on the airport property from people that have property out there, okay? That doesn't go into this revenue because of the way that the system is set up. So that's where that's at. Not huge changes in anything this year. There's an increase in the line for snacks, shirts, hats, and all that, because we have an increase in the rental payments for the upstairs offices this year. The synergy, that revenue has fallen short the last couple of years because they were behind on getting the project online, but it is now online, so we will get the full 28,000 this year. So we're looking at around 105,000 in revenue for the airport. I think that's pretty much what the budget was, right? $114. So when you add in what comes out of property taxes this year, the airport will actually make a small profit. EMS revenue is up just slightly. Call volume is holding pretty steady. to where it was. So I'm not really looking for a whole lot more EMS revenue. Insurance companies sure don't want to go up on what they pay for ambulance calls, and we probably will have some write-offs that we'll have to do this year. So I'm projecting that EMS revenue will hold fairly flat. You can see that we increased the other 3 towns that we covered by the amount that the budget went up. So they're gonna pay a little bit more this year. Parks and Rec, Dwayne, I kind of deferred to Dwayne on this. We had this conversation last year where I would cut his revenue every year, and he ended up exceeding what I said that I thought he would do. He has a better handle on that up there. So these are his numbers. I'll tell you that to date, if you can see from your spreadsheet, we were at 58% of the budget year, and we've only collected 50% of this revenue, bearing in mind that the springtime, late spring, early summer is a big period when he takes in a lot of revenue when summer camps start. The kids start coming in for summer camp, so I do expect he'll catch up. I don't think he will exceed his revenue this year, but he should be pretty close to what we projected, so. Where that's at. Senior center is, they're doing very well this year. Wise, they're almost at 100%. And we're only 66% of the budget year, so I thought they were a little bit, they're doing pretty well on their meals. Transfer station revenue is up a little bit as well, again, because Alma and Westport's contribution is tied to the percentage of the budget. The budget's up, they pay more as well. You see user fees, we've been, are really up. In 23, we collected 98,000. We budgeted 95, and we're already at 77. So, they're collecting the fees up there. They should have been collecting them all along. The credit card machine is a huge part of that, because now they can just go out and collect the money before people drive off, and so that's increased our user fees. Cardboard, we haven't done quite so well on this year. Prices have been down just a little bit, so we cut that just slightly. But we have been doing pretty well on metals. You can see that we're running ahead of estimates on that. So I upped that a little bit as well. Again, not quite so conservative this year on my revenue amounts, which also is helping to offset the increase in the budget on the other end. Without having to worry about whether or not we're going to have a shortfall from that. Yeah, waterfront. I'm gonna go look at that again. I'm not sure what that. Mouse is. Why did it catch that? That one I may have to send you a look at it tomorrow and send back out to you. That might be a typo. Sorry about that. State revenues, revenue sharing again, 751,000, which is about 85% of what the state projected for revenue sharing for us for this year. The Betty and the Homestead are just estimates. We won't know until we do our commitment for sure what those will be. So we just left them the same as last year. Local roads, we've been doing better. Local roads is paid for by share of gas tax. And again, that's kind of economy driven. So I don't, we got 57,000 this year. I'm just a little conservative on that. If gas prices go up too high, people will stop driving, and we might not get everything that we got entitled to. Cell tower lease is based on the lease rate, and general assistance is an estimate, and it's based on what we end up actually paying out, because the state reimburses us 70% of what we pay out, so that's an estimate. Excise tax, that's an area where we've done quite well for years. I was a little hesitant to, up the excise tax by too much, because for a couple of years, there were no new cars to buy. Everybody's buying used cars, and you don't collect as much excise tax on vehicles as they age. But I've been proven wrong for the last couple of years, and you can see we're at 400,000, and I only budgeted 560 this year, so we're gonna far exceed that. So I did increase that excise tax a little bit, because it looks like that's gonna hold up. So there's an increase there. Tax interest, we haven't collected a lot of tax interest. That's actually really good news, because that means people are paying their property taxes. And, we're not filing a lot of liens. And I don't know an exact number, but Susan, a couple of days ago, with a bunch of tax liens for me to sign off on. And we're collected somewhere, I think, right around 97% of what we bill in property taxes, which is pretty impressive. People are paying their taxes, so for that to be down is actually a good thing. The same with, we held the lien fees the same. We might be filing liens, but people are paying them off, so we're not close on. Agent fees is just what we collect through the sale of hunting, fishing licenses and things like that. That's held pretty steady. Some of this other stuff is just, hit and miss here and there. Shellfish conservation, that's just based on selling licenses that we get.
Was the 340.
Oh, I don't know, something I was writing.
I was gonna say, I got it too.
Scribbling.
Just keep doing it on something. Just pick up on it.
But it looks pretty good in the shellfish department, wow.
Produces a small amount of revenue. You might question me a little bit on the code enforcement revenue, because we've already collected $62,500 this year, and I haven't projected anywhere near that. We had one very large building permit this year for the senior housing thing. And we certainly won't have that again next year, so can't account for that. Animal control is just fines and all of that. Cable fees have been holding pretty steady. Bank interest, this goes back again to our fund balance discussion. Last time I checked, we had almost $8 million sitting in the bank over here. And as you can see, this year we've had $235,000 in interest already this year on it. But if we're going to, like the discussion we had earlier with Kim, their fund balance is in our account. And if they're gonna start taking money out of their fund balance to help out with their budget, help out with their paving or whatever, that will reduce that amount down by quite a bit. So I'm not quite as bullish on bank interest for next year as I have is what we're seeing there. The SRO grant was just for 2 years, so that was for 2 years that's done. And that's another discussion we'll have to have with Kim when the time comes as to who's going to pay for the SRO this year. Because right now, I don't think she can fully fund it, so that'll have to be a conversation. And then there is money in the TIF this year to pay for the planning budget, so the economic development and planning budget actually does not come from taxation, it comes from the TIF, so that budget's a zeros out. That's the advantage of having the TIF. So that gets you to the $4,043,500 I-94, that's the one that's on the street.
Questions on revenues before we move along?
Pardon?
Here, questions on revenues before we move along? Okay. Congratulations.
So this is more like food pantry, helping kids, American Legion project, these are things that we can do in Europe. I haven't changed them for a while. So you guys can mull that one over again. The libraries asked for a little bit more this year. They've been at 63,000 for how many years now?
5 or 6 years.
So there's a slight increase in the request from the library. New Hope for Women, we've been doing for a number of years. Like we started a couple of years ago, their request is basically the same. They asked, I think it's like 25 cents for every resident or something like that. Waldo County Community Action Partners, they provide quite a few transport services for residents, even though it's Waldo County, they do cover Lincoln County. We started doing them a couple of years ago. Their request did not change this year. Senior Spectrum was up just slightly. And then we had requests from people that we haven't funded or didn't want to fund in the past. So there's 3 new requests in here. One is from Combat Behavioral Health. You can see they're asking for. The second one is from Maine Public Radio, Television. I like to listen to NPR, but
I'm looking at which page.
it should have been just the first 2. After your.
This is. And then main public.
Yeah.
This is the new stuff, Jerry.
Did you put this stuff right here?
Thank you. Yeah, that's, I didn't get. Thank you. Sorry.
So Maine Public Radio is asking for $100. Then there's LCTV, for the last several years. The information in your book is from 2023, however, I do have their 2024 information. So that, I have the information that I request from them will be updated on file. But what they're asking for, 15,000, is the same as it's been for the last 1 year, 2 years, 3 years.
Can you send the new letter?
Sure.
Is there a change in terms of what they're broadcasting for Wisconsin? So we're still not doing school games and stuff?
We're not doing games.
Yeah.
And then there's a new request this year from Camp Susan Curtis. I'm not familiar with this. I did read what they sent. You can see through their request, they're asking for $3,000, and they did serve 3 kids from town of Wisconsin.
Okay, is it located in Portland or what is it?
I think they're down that way somewhere, yeah. I mean, their mailing address is Portland, but I don't think the camp is in Portland.
Yeah, I couldn't tell.
It's out by one of the lakes or something along that way. Like I said, I've never heard of them before.
Storm.
So that's their request. I do have all of their financials, I think, because the file's that thick. So I didn't include all that. Anybody that wants to take a look at financials for some of these, the library, I'll send you updated stuff from LCTV, but I do have all of their financial information and all the stuff that we asked for, so.
I just assume not take one anyone knew that they ever gave money to before.
Well, you can see this year's request is up a little bit, it's, 8% over what we spent last year for just people that we normally do. But I don't feel it's my place to take these new requests and say, No, the budget, they don't ever want to do anything more than what we've already done. I don't feel that it's, I should make that decision. So I will, I'll send it to you. So that's everything that I have for you tonight. All right. Thank you, Dennis, very much. All right. More work.